Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Prep Life Podcast. This is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini and Amy Anger. And I am joined by Coach Brittany today. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So, today we're going to be talking about self sabotage. And I think this is very prevalent in our community when it comes to self sabotage on many different levels. So, we're going to talk about the 11 signs that you are self sabotaging, and we'll kind of work in some personal self sabotage that we've done between the two of us. And sometimes you don't, when you're self sabotaging, you may not even realize that you are. But upon a closer inspection, it can look like avoidance, conflict creation, controlling behavior. So once you recognize these signs of the self sabotage, then it will help you to begin to change them. So I believe you're going to start with the first sign, right?
The first sign would be to start avoiding people, situations that make you uncomfortable. Maybe in the bikini prepping world, you're maybe avoiding the gym.
Yeah, I think that this one, a personal example I have for this is just after a show, sometimes I feel uncomfortable like being around people that maybe like if I've blown my diet or I haven't done very well, like it makes me uncomfortable to go into the gym and like be around people with my body not being as lean as it was like before the show and things like that. So that's my example. Do you have an example of avoiding
Um,
people or
I
situations?
would say I've had a similar example is that I had a really bad reverse after my very first show, blew up 50 pounds in like 3 months. It was horrible. And I felt like I couldn't go to the gym because I was like this shredded person. And then I'm coming back as this like fatty. And I just was so embarrassed. So it took me a long time to notice I was self-sabotaging myself by not going to the gym, by fearing judgment. So I got a gym in my garage for a little while to get me back to it. And then I eventually came back to the gym. So
That's a good strategy. Yeah, I feel like in those situations where you overeat the calories, like it's it would be so important to get back to exercise to get, some water off and things like that. And that is a form of self-sabotage in our world because we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak, after a show in some circumstances. All right. Number two is staying within your comfort zone and avoiding change. And I think this one is really a zone that a lot of us, kind of hit in the prep life because we are constantly having to be made to feel uncomfortable and going outside of our comfort zone. I was talking to a client yesterday about how we uh, are having to make exceptional choices in order to be exceptional. And if we were making average choices, then we would continue to be average. So for us, we have to go way against the grain of society and the choices that feel comfortable. So I think just trying to, not go outside of that, not push yourself in the gym, like with your weights or, you know, um, trying to like keep that homeostasis pattern. I think it's a trap that we can fall into where we won't move forward in our preps.
yes. And so the next one will be setting goals that are too low to ensure success. So that would look like maybe after having a bad rebound or something like that, you want to get back into prep, but you're scared to have those things happen again. And so you set these little tiny goals, but then you're so much capable of so much more. And so you end up self-sabotaging your goals just because you make them so little to where you're not exceeding yourself. I see, or like you're setting yourself back in the gym because you're not believing you're so strong enough. Like you're scared to do the heavier weight. You're setting your goals too low because you're stronger than that. If you're plateauing on weights for so long, challenge yourself and get back into it.
Yeah, I think too with show path, this one can be pretty prevalent in terms of we kind of pick those shows that we know we're going to be successful, where it may not be actually helping us get better. So like, for example, like if we chose a warm-up show, there's the one scenario where someone chooses a harder show that's bigger and more advanced because it has a higher level judge that's going to give us appropriate feedback versus, a smaller show where we could easily win like first or an overall, and kind of like setting that bar low in that sense. Number 4 is creating conflict with romantic partners, loved ones, friends, or coworkers. And I think that in this situation with self-sabotage, it's important to get buy-in from our romantic partners, from our loved ones, those people that we surround ourselves with, or at least setting expectations like, I'm going to be in prep. So these are probably some of the choices that I'm going to be making for a couple of months while I reach this goal. Just kind of like educating them, getting them on board rather than you're kind of setting yourself up for the self-sabotage if you don't communicate with these people. I find this, like, for me, this was a learning experience when I first started competing, not having these conversations, which part of that you just don't know, like what to expect and the type of conversations that you have to have. But it's really important to do that ahead of time so that the expectations for everybody are set and you don't get yourself in a situation where you're not communicating and your goals and then people are like hurt and upset.
Yes. And that completely ties into number 5, which is trying to control others. My example would be, I did this long time ago in the past, like the first show, I didn't know, it's hard to explain to your loved ones, how things are going to go if you've never done it before. But new clients or new bikini competitors, they have troubles with, well, if I'm eating this way, you need to eat this way, especially with the people you live with or you're close with or you have events with a lot. You try to be mad at them because they're still living their normal lives, eating how they normally eat, and you've chosen to do this competition and you decide to get mad at them just because they're not eating healthier or spending more time in the gym like you are. But switching that around and being grateful for getting to eat the way you do and feel the way you do, work out and have all the good feelings from going towards the goal of show.
Yeah. And then number 6 is attempting to gain others' approval. So this could go 2 different ways in prep, as far as like the side that you're kind of talking about, where we try to make sure that everyone's kind of happy, but we're kind of putting ourselves on the side. Could be one way of doing that. And then another way could be just, we're making these choices about prep and things for like a coach's approval or like the way like your significant other like sees your body or something like that. It's always going to be down the wrong path if you're not choosing the right why as to why you're doing it. It should be like coming from your internal motivations and things like that, rather than an external motivation of somebody that's not living in your body to seek their approval.
Yes. And the 7th one is making excuses. So I have an example of in the past, I'm not too far in the past, but I'm working on it now. Telling myself I'm tired, I'm hungry, or, even as far as I can't do this or I don't want to do this. The more and more times we do that and make excuses for ourselves or come up for reasons why, oh, it's better to take a rest day today, or, oh, I'll do my cardio later. We're self-sabotaging ourselves for our future self. So always being in the moment, marking off those daily tasks you have every day and just getting it done, and you'll be a lot more happy with the way you get to your goals.
Yeah. So number 8 is taking actions that don't match your values and goals. And my personal example of this one is it was really close to a show, and I was kind of looking at some of my teammates the night before and like kind of hearing about like what types of foods they were going to be eating, and I wasn't really getting any foods. So I took, a bad action in terms of like I stayed in my head. I was in a bad negative headspace thinking that I wasn't, worthy of like getting these extra foods and things like that. And so I personally wasn't ready. I probably would have been ready the next day, but I decided to dive into the peanut butter for self-loathing and pity. And it definitely didn't line up with my goals. And, the show didn't go as well as it could have if I would have made a different choice.
Yes, we've all been there. Number 9 is comparing yourself to others. And I'm going to add to that, to yourself or your past self or what your future self might look like into your head. My example is last year going into my last national show. It was my second time as nationals. The only reason why we decided to do it because I got 4th at Universe. So I was so close to getting my pro card. So we decided to keep going. Well, I got in my head, and I had some stuff like skin stuff going on and just some other things like with flights, and my mind wasn't in it. And so I self-sabotaged myself by comparing myself to what I looked like at Universe. And I told myself, I'm not going pro today. It's not going to happen. I'm just going to do my best, try to place at least. And that totally ruined my confidence, my stage presence. Of course, I still did really well. Now looking back, I got 6th. I'm still happy with that. But I know that in my head, if my head would have been there, I may have been able to place a little bit better if confidence was a reason why I placed 6th and not higher.
Yeah. And then 10 is social withdrawal or isolation. And we kind of touched on this about like the post show avoiding the gym. I think too, just any kind of like when you're actually in prep in the trenches, just kind of pulling away from friends and support systems and really isolating yourself, putting yourself on an island and not, allowing other people to be like a part of the process and letting them choose to be. Whereas, sometimes we just try to become hermits and think that that's going to be the best way when we really need social interaction. Like we can't just say, okay, well, I'm in prep, so I'm going to be like, not see anyone for 12 weeks here. Because that's just not realistic in terms of like looking at our overall health and well-being because we're social beings.
Yeah. And when you're done with a show, when you go off of prep, you don't want to have nobody
No
there.
friends. Yes.
And then the last one is risky behaviors such as substance abuse, gambling, overspending, promiscuity. Well, ours maybe look a little bit different than that. I talk more, when we look at prep is like risky behaviors as post show, binge eating, not going to the gym for a long time, just, making risky behaviors, maybe taking, you do blow up and then you take some risky supplements and wreck your health even more to try to lose a little bit of weight. There's a lot of risky behaviors in bodybuilding, and it's just not the best to do that because it just always ends up in self-sabotage, and it could lead down a really bad road for health too.
Yeah. And I've seen people, binge like during a prep just because they are self-sabotaging in their heads and like leading into a show, not even just after a show, but they'll binge like during their prep because they just don't feel like they're worthy of that title or they don't see themselves in that role. They're not visualizing themselves as a bikini athlete. And because they're allowing those thoughts to creep in their head, then they start binging with self-doubt. So I think that segues really well into this next piece about just like how you're talking about yourself. So for example, like if someone's trying to quit smoking, person one, the person that's not going to be on a good path, because it's going to be a temporary thing. They're going to say, oh no, I'm quitting. Like if they're getting offered a cigarette. And then the second person, the one that's not in the self-sabotage mode, they're going to say, oh no, I'm not a smoker anymore. So there's a big difference in the verbiage that you use with yourself when it comes to that. We probably, there's probably not a lot of smokers that listen to this podcast, but if you're identifying yourself as a smoker, or if you're identifying yourself as a bikini competitor, when offered, like, let's say a piece of cake at a birthday party, you'll be like, no, I can't, right? I can't, that doesn't fit into my macros because I'm a bikini competitor, rather than just saying, no, I'm trying to stay away from cake. There's a big difference, right? So do you want to talk about those identities, just a little bit, like how we can look at ourselves and all that?
Yeah, so if we want to look like or feel like or be a bikini bodybuilder, we want to ask ourselves, what do they look like? Well, they probably, depending on what part of their season, they're always going to have a type of musculature to their body. They're gonna look healthy and fit most of the time. How do they talk to themselves? Well, for me right now, I'm trying to tell myself I'm a pro because that's my goal that I'm going towards, but they talk to themselves in a positive way. And even, having failures in the gym, maybe not reaching the weights we want to do, or failure in shows of not placing or getting the pro card or whatnot. They aren't failures unless we look at them that way. And really, it's only a failure if we give up. So we always are talking to ourselves in that way. But if we're talking to ourselves negatively, we're gonna think of it as a failure.
Yeah. So just kind of like, what does a healthy and fit person do? What does a bikini athlete, how do they think? How do they make decisions? And what actions are they taking? So it's super important that your dialogue with yourself, the true change is going to come from a true identity change. So your behaviors are going to change if you envision yourself through a new identity. So, maybe in the past, like, you were a yo-yo dieter or you were overweight. It's important to start identifying and thinking of yourself, maybe before you get to that ideal body type, but just, labeling yourself, I am a bikini athlete. There's a big difference in that dialogue, and, setting your goals based around that value and adopting that new identity. It's going to help you really kind of start talking and thinking in the appropriate way. Like, I'm strong, I'm capable, I can do this, nothing's stopping me. And so, yeah. Do you want to get into the 8 ways that we can stop self-sabotaging for our last part of this chat?
Yes. So look before you leap. So that means to, notice what you're doing, notice your behaviors, your thoughts, your feelings, ask yourself, are these things helping you or are they hurting you? Usually a lot of times we feel pressured to do something, to act a certain way, in bikini world, especially when we're in prep, especially this time of year, it's summer, people are going out to the lake, they're drinking more, they're eating, more like sugary things and, ice cream and stuff. List goes on for that. Anyways, like looking at those things and realizing that you don't need to feel pressured to do that. If you're going to an event or something, think of more positively, and that you're there spending time with those people. You're there to make memories. You're not there to remember what food you ate, what drinks you drank, whatnot. Believe it or not, you actually can have a ton of fun without alcohol. So it is possible.
Yeah. Okay. So the next point is boost your self-awareness. And it's just really important to spend that time self-reflecting. So you can do that by journaling. You can document your behaviors, kind of take an audit and assessment, and thinking about where you're coming from. And just, pause throughout the day and like kind of check in with yourself, and just try to become more intentional about where you're going to need to make changes to adopt this new identity. So, what are you like now? what are your behaviors that you display? Take that audit and then think about ways and reflect on ways that you're able to change them to become more a part of this new identity that you have adopted.
Yeah. And so the next one would be make small changes. Positive action certainly beats self-defeating action. But remember, habits are effectively changed in small steps. Thinking in terms of incremental changes. So replace one thought or behavior every day you give yourself to make that change in a habit. So if you want to become a bikini bodybuilder, start thinking yourself of that, asking yourself what they do. Well, they work out. So replace sitting on the couch watching Netflix and go lift some weights instead. That would be an easy replacement right there. And that's one step closer to your goal. You don't have to think of all the things, just get started and you'll get there someday.
Yeah. And remember to take it in bite-sized chunks. So if you are a person that doesn't drink a lot of water, as we're both drinking water here, I was just thinking about this. For example, I had a client that just started this challenge, right? We're on day 13 or something like that. And the challenge is to drink a gallon of water. Well, she doesn't drink that much water, but we didn't want to go from like a couple glasses a day to a full gallon. So throughout this challenge, like she's been building her way up every kind of day or every couple of days, like she's increasing and increasing. And so she's finally to that gallon mark. But it's something that I think, you don't need to go like balls to the walls, like jump all in, change all of the things all at once. It's important to remember that things can be broken down into small bite-sized chunks with the thought of the long-term goal in mind and that all coming into plan. So with number 3, it's setting meaningful goals and pairing them with action plan. This is where you're just going to have to, you have those goals lined up and you're setting active live intentions for each one. So, um, consider your deepest values and your why whenever you're setting your goals. And that's going to be able to kind of propel you forward. So what do you value most in life? What is important to you? What gives you sense of purpose and meaning? So, if one of your core values is spending time with family and friends, and then you decide like, hey, I'm going to go on prep and I'm going to stop like seeing people, that's not going to align and that's going to be something temporary. So you have to find out ways that you can alter. Like, let's say you like to go to, I don't know, let's say a restaurant with your friends. Now, you don't have to take that activity out, but the actions and the habits that go along with that dinner might be totally different. You might be doing like a club soda instead of a wine. You might be like factoring in like your high day or your refeed day into that meal, or just sticking with a lean protein and a vegetable. You're still doing the same action because it aligns with your core value, but your habits around that action are different. And they're giving you like small little steps towards that big long-term goal.
Yeah. And so this next one is know and embrace your strengths. So everyone has character strengths that you can help thrive once you identify and acknowledge them and embrace them. So reflect on your strengths, identifying not just the things that you do well, but the attitudes you hold dear and positive emotions towards your experience. When you feel your best, knowing your strengths and finding those things, and doing at least one of them every day can help you, solve that self-love. That a lot of reasons why we do self-sabotage is because we don't know our worth or our value. And so we don't respect our bodies. So we don't work out or we don't eat properly to make ourselves feel good. If, for an example, I love donuts but they aren't the best for my goals to have all the time. And because I have digestion issues, gluten is not the best. And, in the past I would have donuts all the time. And I didn't care that it wrecked my stomach. I didn't care that it spiked my blood sugar crazy high and I had insulin sensitivity issues and I would, put on weight. So learning to, have those strengths. So my strengths was, as long as I didn't have a donut, I didn't want it. As long as I would have maybe a bagel that, kind of would have the same shape, I could make it sort of sweet with, Greek yogurt on top and some cinnamon, a little bit of stevia. It's so good. And I would have that and kind of trick my brain into thinking that's just a different type of donut. Or then, nowadays there's protein donuts and stuff you can make in Ninja air fryers and all this stuff. So there's lots more ways nowadays to find your strengths. So that's a way that you can look at a weakness and turn it into a strength, even with food.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next point is befriend yourself. So your inner critic is that primary factor that's going to cause the self-sabotage. So just replacing that automatic self-critical thoughts and replacing it with more nurturing ones is going to be the first step to stopping your self-sabotage. It all starts within and that inner voice. Your body will do a lot for you if your brain's on board. So having like whatever your mind is, wherever it's going, your body will follow. And so it's very important to provide yourself with like that gentle attitudes towards acknowledging, you're going to feel several different emotions throughout prep. You're going to make mistakes, and just accepting that as part of your human experience and giving yourself grace when you do make those mistakes. Like you mentioned before, it's not really something, there's not something wrong with, having a slip up or anything like that, as long as you're learning from it. And so any sort of setback or different thing that you may feel like, in the past, it would trigger like some self-sabotaging behaviors because it was something that wasn't on plan. Just giving yourself grace and moving forward from it and just learning from that experience and how to do better next time is probably the best thing that you can do.
Yeah. And so, that leads great into the next point is, maybe work with a mental health therapist. I know I've preached so much about therapy, but it's such good practice to get towards a deeper self-understanding, providing the therapists are professionals, so they can provide you tips, strategies, for facing yourself, trying to put facing and self together, facing your self-sabotaging thoughts and like helping you rewire that brain and learning coping mechanisms, when we do start to have those big emotional things happen. And, in experience with working with clients, they have big emotions and of stress, or I'm not good enough, or their willpower muscle has been just pulling all day because they're around people having stuff that's not, going to fit their macros or whatnot. And so they have this big self emotions, and the therapist can help teach you how to breathe that out and release it out of your body and stay within the present moment and realize, okay, I don't need to be in fight or flight. I'm not starving. I'm still thriving. I'm fueling my body in the right way. I don't need that cake. It's okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last point is just practicing mindfulness. So, being aware of the present moment and really staying within your 24 hours. Anxiety is caused by fear of items that have happened in the past or items that are maybe going to happen in the future, but we're really all guaranteed just the 24 hours we're given. And so keeping in the present moment really allows anxiety to not exist. If you stay within your presence and stay mindful with your actions and what you're doing day to day. And so sometimes in prep, it can feel really like Groundhog's Day, like, we're just waking up, doing the same things. It's a lot of unsexy, monotonous type of actions that just stack on top of each other for weeks and months upon end. But it's those actions that you're doing in the shadows that no one's watching, that you're staying mindful and hitting every single habit that's important for your goal. Those are the things that are going to help you propel forward and be successful. And as long as you can stay mindful, I think that it will be a huge leap forward when it comes to preventing self-sabotage, because a lot of that comes from anxiety. So that's kind of it for today. We appreciate all of you listening. And if you would like to give us any sort of topics that you would like to hear about, you can DM us on Instagram at Prep Life Podcast or at Glam Girl Bikini. And if you would like to apply for your unicorn prep, you can go to our website, glamgirlbikini.com, and hit the Get Started button to apply. So this is your founder and CEO of Glam Girl Bikini, Amy Anger, signing off with Coach Brittany Gable. Thanks for listening, guys.
Listening.